Hello students, hope all of you are doing well. This is a new class of electric heating. In this video, in this particular class, we will deal with some types of electric heating. So before we go with detailing in the types of electric heating, the first and foremost thing we need to know what actually electric heating is and the types we are talking about. What are the different types of electric heating we can have? So let us start this video. So what is electric heating? Electric heating is a process in which electrical energy is converted to heat energy. We all know this. Now, what are the common applications? The common application includes space heating, cooking, water heating, and industrial process. So, you can see here that electric heating has a large number of applications. Now, an electric heater is an electrical device that converts an electric current into heat. The heating element inside every electric heater is an electrical resistor and works on the principle of the Joule heating. Right? We all know about Joule heating. Now, what is that? Whenever an electric current passing through a resistor, it will convert that electrical energy into heat energy. Now, most modern type of electric heating devices use nichrome as the active element. So, the heating element that is being used is something special. It has some properties like it will have high resistivity. It will have high melting point. So, one type of that element is nichrome. The heating element depicted on the right uses nichrome ware supported by ceramic insulator. So this is all about electric heating. Electric heating is just a process where electrical energy is being converted to heat energy, and the process of conversion can be classified into different types. What are the advantages of electric heating? Electric heating is free from dirt, hence minimum effort for cleaning is required. It is free from flue gases, hence no need of exhaust system for heat generation. Temperature control can be done very easily. An electric heating system is economical compared to other conventional heating systems available in the industry. Both the installation cost and running costs are low. Automatic protection against any abnormality in the heating system can easily be provided. The efficiency of the system is quite high compared to other equivalent heating systems. The electric system is noise free and starting of the system is quite faster than other heating systems. So if we summarize the advantages of electric heating, what are those? See, whenever we are using electric energy, it is always free from noise, it's always free from dust, it's always free from flue gases. So electrical energy is always friendly to environment or to nature. Next, efficiency. Efficiency of electrical energy is far more better than any other types of energy. So whenever we are using electrical energy to convert it into any other type of energy, we can have maximum amount of efficiency. Right? Similarly, starting, braking, this type of control can be done easily and smoothly in electric machines. So electric heating also provides a smooth starting. Yes, this is the types of electric heating. See, we were only aware of the term electric heating, but depending upon the procedure, depending upon the application, depending upon the material used, electric heating can be broadly classified into such a number of groups. So what are these? If we first classify electric heating, these are resistance heating, arc heating, and high frequency heating. Now again, resistance heating can be classified into direct and indirect resistance heating. Similarly, arc heating can be classified into direct and indirect arc heating. Again, high frequency heating, these are classified into induction heating, dielectric heating, and infrared heating. Among them, induction heating is again classified into direct induction heating and indirect induction heating. So these are the total classification of electric heating. In your semester also, this is one question, like write down the classification of electric heating. So there you can write the types of electric heating. Under that, this is the total classification. Yes. Now, direct resistance heating. Now we will study in detail about resistance heating. Now, what is the process? The material or charge to be heated is taken as resistance and current is passed through heat. So, the principle of direct resistance heating is the material we need to be heated, we keep current passing through that particular material. The charge may be in the form of powder, pieces, or a liquid. Two electrodes are immersed in the charge and connected to supply in case of DC or single phase AC supply. Three electrodes are immersed in the charge and connected to supply in case of three-phase AC supply. When some pieces of metal are to be heated, then some highly resistive powder is sprinkled over the surface of pieces to avoid direct short circuit. The current flows through the charge and heat is produced. This method has high efficiency since heat is produced in the charge itself. Here in this figure you can see two electrodes are connected with the supply and high resistive powder is being sprinkled over the charge. So this is an image of direct resistance heating. As the current in this case is not easily variable, therefore automatic temperature control is not possible. However, uniform and high temperature can be obtained. This method of heating is used in salt bath furnaces and in the electrode boiler for heating water. Indirect resistance heating. In this method of heating, electric current is passed through a wire or other heating high resistance material, forming a heating element. The heat proportional to I square R loss produced in the heating element is delivered to the charge by one or more of the modes of transfer of heat. Now, what are the modes of transfer? These are conduction, convection, and radiation. If the heat is transferred by conduction, the resistor must be in contact with the chamber or with the charge. An enclosure known as heating chamber is required for heat transfer by radiation and convection for the charge. For industry purposes where a large amount of charge is to be heated, then the heating element is kept in a cylinder surrounded by jacket, okay, containing the charge. So this is indirect resistance heating. Somehow it is different from direct resistance heating. What is happening in indirect? That charge is passed through the material to be heated indirectly. It passes through some processes. It may be conduction, it may be convection, it may be radiation. So this is the figure of indirect resistance heating. Here the arrangement provides a uniform temperature. Atomic temperature control can be provided in this case. This method of heating is used in room heater, immersion water heater, various types of resistance ovens employed in domestic and commercial cooking. Now, for this direct and indirect resistance heating, what are the requirements that this heating element should have? Now, a good heating element should possess the following properties. It should have high specific resistance so that small length of wire may be required to produce given amount of heat. It should have high melting temperature. It should not oxidize at the temperature of the furnace, otherwise we will require frequent replacement of element. It should have low temperature coefficient of resistance so that at starting from cold it should not take heavy current. It should have positive temperature coefficient of resistance. It should have ductility and flexibility and high mechanical strength of its own. So these are the requirements of a good heating element. Now what are the different types of heating material that we can have? Actually, for having a high heating quality, we need to use some alloys. In spite of using direct any material, if we use alloy, then their properties become much more familiar for a heating element or a heating material. So there are different types of alloys used for heating elements. The choice of the material depends upon the service condition, such as maximum operating temperature. Now, these alloys are mainly divided into 4 classes. Types of alloy: composition, nickel copper, nickel chromium iron, nickel chromium, and iron chromium aluminum. These are the 4 types of alloy. Among them, what are the composition? The composition is 45% nickel and 55% copper in nickel copper. In nickel chromium iron, 60% nickel, 24% iron, and 16% chromium. Nickel chromium individually can have 80% nickel and 20% chromium, and iron chromium aluminum can have 20 to 30% chromium, 5% aluminum, and 65 to 75% iron. What is the maximum temperature of operation? For nickel copper, it is 400 degrees centigrade. For nickel chromium iron, it's 950 degrees centigrade. For nickel chromium, it's 1150, and for iron chromium aluminum, it's 1150 to 1350. So it's the highest one. Specific resistance at room temperature of 20 degrees centigrade. For nickel copper, it's 49 microohm per centimeter cube. For nickel chromium iron, it's 110 microohm per centimeter cube. For nickel chromium, it's 109 microohm per centimeter cube. And for iron chromium aluminum, it's 140 microohm per centimeter cube. Specific gravity: for nickel copper, it's 8.88. For nickel chromium, it's 8.28. For nickel chromium iron, it's 8.28. For nickel chromium, it's 8.36. And for iron chromium aluminum, it's 7.2. Now, temperature control of resistance furnace. How this temperature can be controlled? The temperature of the resistance furnace depends on voltage of supply, current through the element, and both of which are independent parameters. Hence, the temperature of the resistance furnace can be controlled by the following methods. Number 1 is by varying voltage across each element. This can be achieved by using autotransformer or induction regulator, by using a series impedance, and by using a variable voltage supply. Now, by varying the resistance of elements, we can have the different types of methods, like by using variable number of heating elements, by using series parallel or star delta arrangement of elements. And the third one, by periodically switch on and off the electric supply. So these are the methods by which we can control the temperature of the resistance furnace. Varying voltage using autotransformer or induction regulator. In the figure we can see there is a figure of autotransformer, or we can have an induction regulator. The temperature of the resistance furnace can be controlled by autotransformer by providing different taps on the autotransformer or by varying the position of the rotor of an induction regulator to get a variable voltage supply. So these are the two methods of varying voltage using autotransformer or induction regulator. Varying voltage by using series impedance. The temperature of the resistance furnace is varied by connecting impedance in series with the element. A reduced voltage is applied to the element, hence the current gets also reduced. However, this method, since the current is getting reduced in the resistance, this method is resulting in wastage of energy, and hence it's used for small furnaces. Varying voltage by number of elements. R is the resistance of one element. Let N be the number of elements working in parallel. So the total resistance can be varied by putting or removing more resistances in parallel. In this method, the temperature can be changed by putting more and more resistances in parallel in circuit. However, the heating would be uneven if the elements used are not well distributed, which results in complicated varying. Varying voltage by using series, parallel or star delta arrangement. In case of single phase supply, heating element can be arranged by in series for low temperature and in parallel for high temperature by means of a series parallel switch. And in case of three-phase supply, this can be arranged by star for low temperature and by delta for high temperature by means of a star delta switch. Varying voltage by periodically switching on or off electric supply. The temperature of an oven can also be controlled in case of small ovens by periodically switch on or off electric supply. Supply is given to the oven through a thermostat switch. The final temperature is proportional to the ratio of time interval which remains on to the total time interval of on-off cycle. The advantage of this method is that it is more efficient than series impedance method. So these all are the process of direct it's not direct heating, it's resistance heating. So firstly we can say resistance heating can be classified as direct resistance, indirect resistance. Then we have studied about different types of heating, like what are the process for direct heating, what are the process for indirect resistance heating. Now in both the cases we have seen that a heating material is being used. So next we have studied about what are the requirements of a good heating material or good heating element. Now come to resistance furnace. The temperature of resistance furnace can be varied by different way, and in the last we have studied about the different process of varying voltage of resistance furnace. So this is all about resistance heating. Next we will study about induction heating. So what is induction heating? It's a contactless heating method of bodies which absorb energy from an alternating magnetic field generated by induction coil, or heating of material by means of electric current that is caused to flow through the material or its container by electromagnetic induction. So the indirect resistance heating, we have seen that there is a direct contact or indirect contact between the resistance, between the charge to be charged and the material to be heated. But induction heating is totally a contactless heating method. This is the principle. What is the principle of induction heating? Chain of phenomena. Number one, power supply delivers current to induction coil. Number two, coil current generate magnetic field. See, this is somehow similar to transformer, since transformer is also working on mutual induction process. So coil current generate magnetic field. Lines of field are always closed and each line goes around the current source. Coil turns and works. Alternating magnetic field flowing through the part cross section induces voltage in the part. Induced voltage creates eddy current in the part flowing in direction opposite to the coil current where possible, and eddy current generates heat in the part. So this is the principle of induction heating. Specific features of induction heating. First one, it is contactless. Induction heating is always contactless. Heat generation occurs inside the part. Methods can provide very high power densities. Heating may be highly selective in the depth and along the surface. Any processing temperature, any processing atmosphere can be it can be air, it can be vacuum. Very high temperature may be created. Standby losses of equipment are very low. Fast startup. Heating may be usually programmed and automated. No pollution of surrounding space compared to safe gas heating. This is the design. Here you can see this is the base part. This is electronic and digital display where we can see the temperature, and this is the portion where the heat is to be transferred. So heat transferred from this part. Parts of an induction heating system. An induction heating system comprises a tank circuit, a power supply, and a work coil. In industrial application, there is sufficient current passing via the coil to need water cooling. Therefore, a basic installation contains a water cooling unit. The alternating current from the AC line is converted through a power supply to an alternating current that is in line with the combination of coil inductance, work head capacitance, and component resistivity. So this is the figure of typical induction heating system, where this is the power supply and this is the tank circuit and work coil. So these three produces the generated heat. There are two mechanisms of energy absorption, eddy current and hysteresis. Now, eddy current heating occur in all conductive materials, magnetic or non-magnetic steel, copper, aluminium, graphite, molten glass, or oxide, etc. When they are placed in an alternating magnetic field. Eddy currents always flow in a closed loop, and for effective heating, there must be a good path for current to flow in the part to be heated. For example, it is easy to heat a wire loop, but almost impossible to heat a thin wire when the loop is open. Now, what is hysteresis process? Hysteresis heating is zero in non-magnetic materials. Aluminium, copper, hot steels are responsible for a small percentage of heat generation in compact magnetic bodies, mainly steel at low or medium temperature. However, in magnetic materials composed of particulates, including magnetic flux concentrators, hysteresis may be the major source of heat generation. Each particle is heated individually and the workpiece may have any shape and size. It may be massive bodies, strips, films, squares. Operating frequency. A 20 millimeter steel bar can be stress relieved by heating it to 540 degrees centigrade or 1000 degrees Fahrenheit using a 3 kilohertz induction system. However, a 10 kilohertz system will be needed to harden the same bar by heating it to 870 degrees centigrade or 1600 degrees Fahrenheit. Hence, it can be said that higher operating frequencies, mostly more than 50 kilohertz, can be used to heat smaller parts with induction, and lower operating frequencies can be used to heat larger parts more efficiently. In case of advanced solid-state induction power supply with embedded microprocessor control system, consistent and effective heating techniques are achievable based on the fact that all parts are placed at a consistent location within the coil. What should be the approximate smallest diameter? So for still below, depending upon the different frequencies and temperature, the diameter is given over here. Still below Curie and still above Curie temperature. So the below Curie still for Curie temperature is 540 degrees centigrade, and for higher limit it's 870 degrees centigrade. And the diameters are mentioned for different frequencies from 1 kilohertz to 30 kilohertz. Now, what are the advantages? Why should we use induction heating? Short heating cycles and high production rates, better metallurgical result due to fast and cleaning heating, energy savings due to selectivity and high efficiency, good control and repeatability, minimal or no surface oxidation and decarburization, lower distortion, favorable for industrial environment. Some process may not be accomplished other than by induction and safe for surrounding environment. So these are the advantages of induction heating. What are the applications? Very important. Applications are melting, forging and forming, heat treatment, welding, brazing and soldering, shrink and fitting, bonding, inductively coupled plasma, and crystal growth. So, students, we have studied a lot in this video. We have studied about electric heating. We have studied about types of heating. We have studied about detail in two types of major electric heating. One is resistance heating and one is induction heating. But the difference is the two types are totally different from each other. One is directly contacted, other one is purely contactless. So I will suggest you go through this video more than once. You can have a large number of semester question from this part. It may be a 15 marks question, it may be a 5 marks question, but surely we'll have a definite question from this part. So go through this video more than once. In spite of remembering all these things, just absorb all these things. Just go through the processes so that you can write it down in your exam. So best of luck and have a good day, and thank you for watching this video.